There's a strange thing that happens when someone begins to wake up spiritually. The world doesn't change, but the way they see it does. And once this shift happens, there are certain illusions they simply cannot fall for anymore. It's not a choice. It's not an attitude. It's a transformation of perception that quietly rewires the entire relationship they have with life. Those who have studied the works of the late philosopher Alan Watts often notice this pattern. He didn't tell people what to believe, he helped them notice what was always there, but hidden beneath layers of habit, fear, noise, and unquestioned assumptions. And once these layers fall away, the awakened individual discovers that some things can no longer be unseen. One of the first illusions awakened people stop seeing is the old idea of the isolated self. Most people go through life assuming they are a separate entity, sealed inside a body, moving alone through a world that exists apart from them. It's a belief that shapes everything. How they chase success, how they measure their worth, how they fear loss, and even how they search for meaning. But the spiritually awake begin to sense something deeper. They begin to notice that life is not me versus the world, but a continuous movement like a wave rising from the ocean. The wave may appear separate, but it is never disconnected from the water that forms it. This realization doesn't make them arrogant or detached. It makes them humble. They understand their limitations. But they also understand that they are part of something larger and far more complex than the ego's tiny story. Another thing they stop seeing is the illusion of control. Most people spend their days trying to control outcomes, control their image, control what others think, control every possible uncertainty. But awakening shows the limits of this approach. Life doesn't obey our rigid plans. Situations unfold, relationships shift, losses open, and unexpected opportunities appear. The awakened person no longer sees life as a system they must dominate, but as something to participate in. There is action? Yes. There is responsibility. But there is also trust in the unfolding nature of events. Trust in the wisdom of patience. Trust that not everything requires force to work. They stop trying to push the river and instead learn to move with its current. A third illusion that vanishes is the belief that fulfillment lies out there. For most people, happiness is always somewhere else, in the next achievement, the next relationship, the next purchase, the next moment that hasn't arrived yet. It keeps the mind in a state of constant hunger. But awakening exposes the emptiness of this chase. Fulfillment cannot be found in a future that never truly arrives. It emerges in the present moment, in stillness, in clarity, in the quiet recognition that what we truly seek is not an object, but a state of being. The awakened stop chasing what cannot be caught because they finally understand that contentment begins internally, not externally. Another illusion they can no longer participate in is the social performance the masks people wear in order to be accepted. Many individuals spend their lives pretending to be confident, pretending to be happy, pretending to agree, pretending to fit in. But awakening strips away the necessity for these performances. The awakened person values authenticity over approval. They no longer feel compelled to hide their truth, just to blend into the expectations of others. This often makes them quieter, more observant, less reactive. They speak when meaning is needed, not when noise is expected. They choose depth over drama, sincerity over showmanship. And because of this, they often appear mysterious or even strange to others, but in reality, they are simply less willing to betray their inner clarity. Another thing awakened people cannot see anymore is the myth of permanence. They no longer believe that anything in life remains exactly as it is. Everything changes. Emotions, relationships, beliefs, bodies, circumstances. Instead of fearing change, they learn to flow with it. Instead of clinging, they learn to appreciate. Instead of panicking when life shifts, they adapt with a sense of perspective. This doesn't mean they become cold or detached. It means they no longer measure their safety by how tightly they can hold on to things. They understand that life is a series of arrivals and departures, beginnings and endings, and each phase has its own wisdom. They also stop seeing value in comparison. Most people spend years comparing their lives to others who is more successful, more attractive, more loved, more recognized. But awakening reveals how destructive comparison truly is. It is like judging the sunrise by looking at someone else's window. The awakened person realizes that every life unfolds according to its own rhythm. There is no need to measure one's worth through the achievements or failures of another. The competition dissolves, and what remains is clarity and peace. Another illusion they stop falling for is the idea that thoughts are absolute truth. The average person is controlled by their thoughts, worries, assumptions, fears, expectations. They believe every story the mind creates. But the awakened person learns to observe thoughts the same way you might observe clouds passing through the sky. They rise, they move, they dissolve. Thoughts are not commands, they are and because of this, awakened people no longer react blindly or impulsively to every mental movement. They respond instead of merely reacting. Finally, the spiritually awake can no longer see the world as disconnected, meaningless fragments. They begin to perceive the subtle threads connecting events, people, and experiences. They notice patterns, lessons, timing, Life stops looking like a random arrangement of accidents and starts to resemble a much richer, more intelligent story. This doesn't require mystical explanations or supernatural beliefs, simply comes from paying attention deeply and without distraction. All these changes make awakened individuals see life with more simplicity and more gratitude. They don't need as much drama. They don't need as much noise. They find peace in ordinary moments, walking, breathing, observing, connecting. They understand that the world is not something to escape from, but something to wake up within. And once they see this, they cannot unsee it. Awakening does not grant superiority. It grants responsibility. The responsibility to see clearly, to live honestly, and to walk gently through the world. Because when someone stops falling for illusions, they naturally become more compassionate. They understand the confusion of others without judgment. They see through conflict without needing to escalate it. They respond to life with wisdom instead of fear. In the end, what awakened people cannot see anymore is not a limitation, it is a liberation. They lose the false so they can embrace the true. They let go of illusions so they can experience life directly. And they stop searching endlessly because they finally realize what they were looking for has always been here.